What's on your Valentine playlist?
I got Love and Happiness, Al Green.
Ah, nice.
What's on your playlist?
That'll get us in the mood. I can feel the love already.
Feel the love. Yeah, we usually start about let's say 8:31-ish.
Ish.
Well, I hope everyone made their reservations for this evening because it'll probably fill up.
Let's see if we can get a little bit of this music playing.
Make it do right. There you go.
That opening part of the song, that's the best part. He starts cranking up the music. All right, that's enough for everybody. All right, looks like it's 8:31, folks, and we are live streaming on Facebook Live, which is the Economic Alliance Snohomish County Facebook page if you want to share it. And we are also going to share this coffee chats on our YouTube page as well. Good morning, folks. It is another coffee chats with EASC. I am excited about today's coffee chats, which is sustainable land strategy and the Thomas Eddy Restoration Project. And I really excited about the panelists today. I'm excited about the opportunity. I am your host, Gary Clark, President and CEO of Economic Alliance, Snohomish County, and I am really pleased with the fact that even though it snowed yesterday and last night, the sun is out here in Snohomish County and Puget Sound region. So that being said, folks, we have, before I go into our discourse today, I'd like to have just an introduction of who we have here today. We have Kari Kwas, who is the Community Engagement Project Manager for Snohomish Conservation District. And so thank you for being with us today. We have Morgan Ruff, who is actually, thank you, Morgan, Snohomish Basin Capital Projects Manager, Tulalip Tribes, which is one of our amazing investors as well. And then we have Mike Ruste, who is the Senior Habitat Specialist, Snohomish County. And then we have the very awesome Linda Leischel, who has the very cool hidden background there. So Linda, nice to meet you as well and have you on our screen. Mike will join us on the screen a little bit later. I'd like to do just a very brief land acknowledgement, and then we'll get started. And with that in mind, we just have a little written piece here. Within Snohomish County, we acknowledge the original inhabitants of this area, the Snohomish people and their successors, the Tulalip Tribes. Since time immemorial, they have hunted, fished, gathered, and taken more care of these lands. We respect their sovereignty, their right to self-determination, and honor their sacred spiritual connection with land and water. We will strive to be honest about our past mistakes and bring about a future that includes their people, stories, voices to form a more just and equitable society. All right, with that in mind, folks, we are going to start off first and foremost to delve into the sustainable land strategy pieces. And I think we're going to have Kari start first with her presentation. So first and foremost, can I get each of you just to say hello to the folks in the room? And then folks, those of you who have joined us online, put in the chat who you're with and your name. So Kari, if you'll go first, then we'll go to Mike, Linda, and then Morgan as just a hello.
Great. Hi, my name is Kari Kwas with the Snohomish Conservation District, and just let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Linda Lyshaw with Snohomish Conservation District.
And I am Mike Reste. I'm a senior habitat specialist with Snohomish County. Hello, everyone.
Hi, everyone. I'm Morgan Ruff with Tulalip Tribes. So honored and appreciate being here today.
All right. Kari, you can take it away.
Well, great. Again, Kari Kwas with the Snohomish Conservation District, the Community Engagement Project Manager there. And I'm here today to share a little bit about the origins of the Sustainable Land Strategy, or SLS, as we like to call it, how we found ourselves with a need for this group to exist. Again, with me is Linda Lyshaw, our Executive Director. She's also the co-chair of Sustainable Land Strategy of the Steering Committee. And Kristen Marshall is also on the call. She works with me at the district, and she participates in the Stillaguamish IT and is our Director of Habitat and Floodplains for Snohomish Conservation District. Just a little bit about Sustainable Land Strategy, just to start. You'll see the logo on the left that was actually done by a Tulalip Tribes member. It's our group that represents farm fish and flood interests. And what that means is that we're paying attention to the lands that are in the estuary and in the farmlands. Everyone wants to be in that nice low ground where the soils are rich. And so that's part of how we got to where we are today, and the need for this group to exist. And you can learn more about us at farmfishflood.org. But just a little history. So imagine you arrive here in the late 1800s from somewhere like Scandinavia. You came to the Pacific Northwest because the climate is similar. It feels like home while offering new opportunity. You arrive in Everett or Stanwood. You walk through what once was lush evergreen forest, avoiding the newly cut stumps, and your feet stop at the water's edge. You look around, amazed at the fertile soil under your feet. The river brings nutrients from the mountains. The tide pushes nutrients in from the ocean. Decaying plant and fish matter bring lush material. You can grow here. Your family will never be hungry. Your crops will never fail. But it's wet, with the ebb and flow of the tide and the raising and lowering of the river. So you begin to build a wall that will separate this amazingly fertile land from the water. You spend days, weeks, months, years building this wall by hand, maybe with the help of a few horses. It is back-breaking work. And then you farm, and the ground provides everything you imagined it would. Your farm thrives. You can not only feed your family, but you can also feed your community with the bounty. You pass the farm off to your children, and then your grandchildren, and then your great-great-grandchildren. And soon your family has been stewarding this land for generations. And you don't think about the salmon, the birds, the wildlife that used to call this land home. They are abundant, seemingly never depleted, no matter how many are taken. They go on and on and on. Now imagine it's current day. You're farming the same land that your great-grandparents diked by hand, and it has been fertile, active, productive land full of memories and family. One day you see an unfamiliar vehicle drive up with government plates. The person gets out of their car and introduces themselves as working for the Department of Fish and Wildlife. They just bought your neighbor's 250-acre farm and wondered if you were interested in selling too. See, those fish that were so abundant when your great-great-grandparents started this farm have almost disappeared. And they want you to tear down that wall that they built to return your farm back to the tides. How do you feel? So in Snohomish County, a large percentage of agricultural land falls in what was estuary habitat. The decline of salmon, particularly in the Stillaguamish watershed, has prompted accelerated restoration of estuarine and nearshore habitat, often displacing productive farmland. In 2008, there were several thousands of acres of farmland targeted for restoration, prompting the Snohomish County Agricultural Advisory Board to request that Snohomish County find a way to find balance between the goals and policies of the Growth Management Act. They called for a moratorium on habitat restoration projects until its concerns were addressed. In the spring of 2010, Snohomish County Executive and the Snohomish County Council launched the Sustainable Land Strategy. June 21st, 2010 was the first SLS meeting convened by the representatives from Puget Sound Partnership, Washington State Conservation Commission, Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, Snohomish County, and the Tulalip and Snohomish Tribes. So the Sustainable Land Strategy started as a small group and forum that focused on cooperative, non-regulatory review of agricultural preservation and salmon recovery, with an emphasis on pushing net gain enhancements or measurable improvements for both. Since then, SLS has morphed and changed in both its mission and its participants. Some founding participants have stepped away from the process while others have joined. SLS continues to be a forum for finding balance between agricultural resilience and salmon recovery. But we have also started smaller task groups to focus on getting multi-benefit projects completed on the ground. We have also taken on a larger focus on advocating for the need of a larger effort to balance the needs of a changing landscape, more flexible grant funding, legislative support, and policy change. So how has it kept going for the last 12 years? With continued funding from Snohomish County, SLS is facilitated by a consultant to the county, David Roberts with Peak Sustainability. The group is led by a steering committee made up of partner entities representing fish, farm, and flood interests, co-chaired by Linda Leishaw with Snohomish Conservation District and Daryl Williams from the Tulalip Tribes. We have 2 integration or implementation committees, one for the Stillaguamish watershed, which Kristen is on, and one for the Snohomish watershed, which Morgan is on, focused on development and implementation of multi-benefit projects. We also have the SLS Communications Group, which has produced a new website for SLS, farmfishflood.org, several digital stories and videos, and we help to promote the special topic sessions, which really we invite anybody to come and learn more about the work that is happening in Snohomish County. And with that, I would love to share this video with you about Sustainable Land Strategy we just produced last fall, just to give you a slight overview again of what this group is all about.
It's a story we've heard before. Decisions made in the past, when nature's bounty seemed limitless, have taken a toll on the natural world we live in today. Western Washington is no exception. Over the last 150 years, forests were cleared for timber and estuaries drained to make way for farmland. It provided food and livelihoods for people. But it came with a cost. The loss of habitat led to drastic declines in Puget Sound Chinook salmon. The treaty rights of tribes to retain access to salmon were severely compromised. By 1999, Puget Sound Chinook had gone from abundant to threatened. Today, Snohomish County has one of the fastest growing populations in the nation. Climate change adds to the uncertainty of what lies ahead. There are many people with different needs from the land, and those competing needs have often led to conflict. The Sustainable Land Strategy is a forum of organizations, agencies, and individuals that understand we can make more progress working together than by being at odds. It is a place to share needs, build trust, and take collective action. The goal is ambitious but necessary: to find a balance in how the land is used for salmon recovery and agricultural resilience in a time of great change. By coming together, there is the possibility of finding solutions everyone can support. Despite differences, people here ultimately want the same thing: a healthy and sustainable landscape that can provide for us all into the future.
Thank you for that. At this point, I would like to turn it over to Morgan.
You think I've been doing this long enough on the Zoom, I would have it down. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much, Kari. That was lovely review of the sustainable land strategy. So my name is Morgan Ruff. I work for Tulalip Tribes, and I am the Snohomish Basin Capital Projects Coordinator or Manager. And as someone who works for the tribe, I really recognize and honor the importance of salmon to tribal culture and the expression of treaty rights. And so because of that, I always start with the salmon, and I really see the world through the lens of fish. So I'm going to go ahead and start us there. I think that that video and that introduction to SLS really provided us with such a fantastic perspective on our history and how we arrived. But Chinook salmon were listed in 1999 and steelhead later in 2007. And as a community, we really came together to adopt the salmon recovery plan that helps lay out what our priority actions are and needs are to recover Chinook salmon. So that plan was adopted back in 2005. This image is of the Snohomish River estuary, and all those colorful patches are areas where wetlands once were present in 1870. So those were areas where salmon had access to different areas. And then this is an image of what it looked like in 1990. And you can really see, yeah, the areas that of loss here in the marshlands area, in the Edie Island area, even upriver in the French Creek Marsh. And really these habitat losses have resulted in reduced fish production on our landscape. Here in the Snohomish River estuary, we've lost over 80% of all the estuary habitat. And across all of Puget Sound, this is actually a really important issue. Across Puget Sound, we've lost 75 to 95% of all river estuary habitats. So restoring these floodplain areas are really a top priority for salmon recovery. Because really what's happening and what we've begun to understand is that there's a bottleneck right here in the middle part of the fish life cycle. So many of us who live in the Pacific Northwest understand the salmon life cycle. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but we tend to have plenty of space in the river systems for eggs and fry in the gravel. But it's really when these fish emerge out of the gravel and are these small fish that we don't have enough habitat that allows them to grow big and strong before heading out into the ocean. And of course, that early growth is very helpful for marine survival, for helping them make it back from the ocean to their natal streams and habitat. So we're right now working to restore this early rearing habitat of floodplains in the estuary as well as in the main stem. So back in 2005, we did set some targets, some goals of where we wanted to go for salmon recovery. One of the targets we set was for estuary tidal marsh. And if you've been driving along the I-5 corridor, you may have noticed that there are some pretty significant changes that have been happening within the tidal estuary. And we have made some progress towards that first set of goals. We do have more work that we need to do, but at least we're making some pretty significant progress. So let me show you. This is an image of the tidal estuary, and you can see we have I-5 running straight through the estuary. But if you have been driving along I-5 at a high tide, you might have noticed if you're driving north along the side of the highway, you have a new area that's flooded. That's our newest area called the Blue Heron Slough Restoration Project that was done by the Port of Everett. There's also the Smith Island project right adjacent, which was done by Snohomish County. And then you can see right over by Marysville there, the Tulalip Restoration Project, which was completed by the Tulalip Tribes.
Morgan,
yeah.
I interrupt you for 1 second to say that we are in your 2-view space instead of full screen of your slide.
Oh, how do I?
If you change your view, should be.
Thank you, Kari.
Yeah. Hide presenter view.
We just assumed you'd like it that way, so we were
You
gonna.
guys, you can see that. Well, now I'm in this one, right?
Yeah, and then down at the bottom of that, you'll see the little, it looks like a little podium
Or you can just hit slideshow. Yep, at the top.
or slideshow at the top. Yep.
Weird. Sorry, y'all. Like I said, you would think we would have this done.
I was with you, Gary.
Okay, so are you seeing that now?
Hit your go to the very top with the change color, and right there it says slideshow to the left of your cursor.
Mm. Okay.
Right by where the words are spelled out up top. Yep, where it says insert, design, and then click on slideshow, which is like the fourth one over. Yep.
There. From current slide.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, are you seeing that?
One more click on that.
I think I'm having some technical difficulties.
Yeah, just
Anyway,
hit
we can
resume.
see the slide bigger now too, though.
Okay, is it working? All right, so apologies for that. Thank you, Kari and Gary, for helping me out. So basically we have, and now I can't remember what I was talking about. Anyway, we've done some restoration work in the estuary, and you may have seen those changes as you are driving on I-5. Okay, did it switch the slide or not? Okay, good. But one of the challenges that we've had over, so funny, I'm having some technical issues here. One of the challenges that we've had are the upper estuary or upper main stem freshwater targets that we set back in 2005. So you can see that we set targets for restoring the edge habitat. That's basically removing armoring, restoring riparian habitat, that's planting trees along the freshwater streams, restoring off-channel habitat, and also large woody debris. So we made some progress on some of those targets, but when you look at the restored edge habitat, we had a target of 10.4 miles, but we've only restored 2.02 miles. And then when you look at the restored off-channel habitat, we've only restored about 13 acres of the 167. So we're way behind on the work that we need to do in the freshwater. And why is this? What was happening now in that freshwater area? Well, we've been working together to implement habitat restoration projects in the estuary. We also had been understanding that there are some different needs in these freshwater main stem areas. And particularly, it's that there are more viable agricultural areas in these freshwater main stem floodplain areas. And so we have begun to investigate, well, what are the needs of those ag purveyors, those agricultural businesses, and how can we better understand how their needs are potentially changing as we are moving into a whole different climate regime. And at the same time, we began to look at how do we manage and deal with the increased water on the landscape that is coming in the form of flooding. And especially, we began to understand and see these challenges in the context of climate change. So we work together with the agri community to develop an agricultural resilience plan, which helps to outline what it means or looks like to be a more resilient community of agriculture. And then as well as these these reach scale plans to look at the river area and better understand what the context is for a variety of different needs and values on the landscape. Really, in the end, flooding has become a big unifier for us. Fields are getting wetter earlier. The water is staying for longer. We have levee systems that aren't really able to handle the pressure of the changing flows. We have banks that are being eroded because we've changed the natural flow of the river. So, and then at the same time, these changing water regimes are also affecting salmon and the needs of fish. So and not to mention the fact that these floods also have important public safety implications. So we began to really think about salmon recovery in a much broader perspective and understanding that it's really the power of these three elements of the salmon needs and the technical underpinning of that, what agricultural purveyors need and understanding better what it means to be a more resilient community, as well as thinking about the entire floodplain system and the way water moves through. So together, we hope we're creating a stronger system for collaboration and moving forward, and potentially moving some of those more challenging interests forward. So the SLS steering committee has really begun to set the overall policy direction and vision, and has helped direct us to create these reach scale plans in all these different areas. And then from those plans, from that bigger vision, we're able to identify and advance suites of projects that have multiple benefits, so that are able to benefit farms, able to benefit fish, as well as address some of those common issues of flooding. So really, we're just a passionate team of hopeful individuals and organizations that are working together in a direction to solve these problems that are increasingly challenging in our work. We are into the sticky problems of the world and trying to figure out how we might be able to move forward. And we hope that together we're stronger. So we're building on the strengths of each organization and making room for new organizations and entities to join in supporting this work moving forward. So this list doesn't include the many different partnerships that we have with landowner or agricultural businesses that have been open to having conversations with us and working to identify solutions within their own land. But together we're coming up with lists like this, where we can see and identify where farm interests and benefits are, where fish interests and benefits are, as well as where we can address flooding. So together, working together, we're working to advance multiple solutions and help support the many values that are held within this floodplain area. So I'm going to pass the mic over to Mike, and hopefully he'll have an easier time sharing than I did. And he's going to talk more about the Thomas Eddy Restoration Project and the work that we're doing in a very specific example. Thank you.
Thank you, Morgan. How does that look to everybody? Okay, I'm going to talk about one of the projects that has been on our books for a very long time. It's the Floodplain Restoration Project. It's been in multiple kind of reach scale plans, including the ones that were created and approved by the SLS. It's a really huge effort on a big portion of the river, and there's a lot of detail here. I'm going to fly through it and give you the very high level version of a presentation for this project. And hopefully I can advance slides. There they go. So here's Snohomish County. The red circle indicates where this project is. It's in the Snohomish River basin on the main stem of the Snohomish River. The Snohomish Basin is a very large basin. It's about 1,800 square miles. Half of it's in Snohomish County, half of it's in King County. The location of this project puts it below the confluence of the Snohomish River and the Snoqualmie Rivers, which are the major tributaries to the Snohomish. And as such, every salmon that is in this basin will pass by this site at least twice in their lives. We have ESA, Endangered Species Act listed Chinook, bull trout, and steelhead, as well as coho, chum, and pink salmon. We've also got a small run of sockeye salmon and lots of other sea run and local trout that use this part of the river. So most of this project is taking place within or around Bob Heirman Wildlife Park, which is the county park. Hopefully some of you have been there. It's a beautiful spot. The image on the top of the screen is from the parking lot. There are lots of vistas over Shadow Lake and the Snohomish River floodplain, and then there are trails to get from the parking lot down to the river. And it's just wide open space. You can get away from it all very easily. This site is kind of right in between Snohomish, Monroe, and Mill Creek, so it's easily accessible. When you look at the park from space, you can kind of see the surrounding area. This reach we call Thomas Eddy. It's a name that's sort of historical, and there's some debate on which eddy on this reach is actually Thomas Eddy, but we like to refer to the whole reach as Thomas Eddy. Some other items just to point out: this is where Bob Heirman Wildlife Park is. There are a couple of features on the floodplain there: Shadow Lake and Lake Beecher. Some of you may have heard of them. And then we've got agricultural neighbors. Chinook Farms is just upstream of the project, and the French Slough Flood Control District is just downstream of the project. The Marshlands Flood Control District is kind of off the screen there on the left bank. So if you peel away kind of the photo there, what you're left with is elevations on the landscape. And while the river looks fairly natural, it's got some meanders, it's got some islands. Some of those yellow lines are those walls that were built along rivers that Kari mentioned early in the presentation. So it's these levees that really constrain the river there and kind of limit the ability for fish to use all of the what we call off-channel habitat, which is in the floodplain behind those walls. So I like to always take a peek back. This is a earliest era photo, and you can see a lot of these levees were built in the early 1900s. This photo from a long time ago shows that these levees were pretty much already on the landscape. And while the river here, you can see, has a lot of nice meanders, it's got a lot of nice gravel bars. If you look at a more current picture, those levees are still in place, and the river has simplified largely because of those levees. So I'm going to focus on the Beck Dike, which is the levee that surrounds the area that is Bob Heirman Park. From the river, it looks like this. It's largely naturalized, but it's really an imposing wall. It's got rock face all along it that has protected this dike from the river. But the river has, over time, it wants its floodplain back. And so it's been sort of eroding these levees over time, and some of that rock is given way. And in a few locations, the levees actually breached. So right now, this floodplain is connected during the highest flood flows. So you can see on the bottom right, sort of your normal low river flows, and then going counterclockwise, various flood stages. So this floodplain is connected, but and sometimes the floodplain will be completely inundated. But this is a picture of one of those breaches. It's a very small hole, and when the river floods, it just squirts water through there like a fire hose, which isn't ideal for fish. It isn't ideal for the people who use the park. And oftentimes during floods, those breaches will just fill up with wood, and that makes some of the trails pretty hard to navigate. This is what the sort of downstream northern portion of the park looks like. There's lots of really important habitat for fish there, but because the levee is still largely intact there, it really cuts that habitat off from the juvenile salmon that want to use it. That bottom left photo is a photo taken just downstream of the star that you can see in the upper left-hand photo. And that's sort of natural stream habitat. We want to increase that amount of habitat by increasing that floodplain connectivity and the function of the floodplain. And that's the major goal of this project. In order to promote this project, we did a lot of stakeholder outreach. I hope some of you knew Bob Heirman. He was a great character. He was a poet, he was an author, and he was an advocate of conservation. And he was one of the driving forces to protecting this park when it was, and promoting the acquisition of this park when it was threatened by development. We reached out to Bob Heirman's family. Bob is no longer with us, but we wanted to make sure they were happy with how this project was moving forward. What we heard from our stakeholder groups is that they're really interested in maintaining access to the river. So the trail is in various states of good or bad condition, often bad condition. And as part of this project, we're going to sort of relocate and improve those trails. River access from the river is also important. So boaters want to make sure that those boating lanes remain open. We also heard from wildlife and waterfowl advocates that protecting Shadow Lake was a key part of their desire for this park. So we've incorporated some elements that will make sure Shadow Lake stays protected. The other thing that wildlife folks wanted to see is not just habitat for salmon, but habitat for other wildlife as well. Much of the park is just kind of a reed canary grass desert with not a lot of habitat value. And then, because we've got agricultural interests and landowners upstream and downstream and across the river from us, we want to make sure that this project only benefits them and doesn't do any harm to those uses. So we've done a whole lot of hydrologic modeling on this reach just to make sure that that is the case. So what are these restoration elements? This is a very wordy graphic that sort of explains some of the treatments that we want to do on the site. We'll be removing levee wherever we can, in some cases, in order to protect Shadow Lake and to provide some of the features that anglers and sportsmen like along that reach. We're going to leave some of the rock along the toe. You can see a lot of asterisks on the page there. Those are all log jams. So those would be engineered log jams that we're putting on the landscape to kind of kickstart the habitat process there. And then there's also, trail improvements and some fish access improvements as well on the site. We have 60% designs that are available on our webpage, and I'll have some information about that in a minute. Right now, the project, we've done a whole lot of work to get to those 60% designs. We've done a lot of stakeholder and public outreach. And right now we're working on final designs. We've got funding in place to do construction. So as long as we get those final designs and permits in hand, construction could begin as early as the summer of 2024. Throughout this process, we'll continue public outreach, and I highly encourage you to track this project and get involved if you'd like to. So right now we're working on final designs. We've got our consultant scope of work for that almost complete, and so we're ready to hit the ground running. There's a web page for the Thomas Eddy Project. Please, you can Google Thomas Eddy Restoration, and it's usually the first item on the list. With that, I'll leave you with another image of fish just waiting for this project to get done, and we can continue the conversation.
All right, thank you, Mike, and thank you all for giving us some very intriguing information. And I'd like to open this up for some Q&A. So our partners that are participating online here, if you have questions or comments, please add them in the chat at this time. The first question is kind of an open question. How have the changing land uses in Snohomish County impacted the ecosystem and the salmon population over time? What does it look like going forward? Just leave this open to anyone who wants to jump in. All right, Kari, it looks like you go ahead.
Me? Do I get to say? Hey, everybody. So Snohomish County is one of the fastest growing counties in the country. We're seeing rapid population growth, and we're seeing increasing urbanization in our areas. We also see a lot of people who are wanting to move to this place because of its rural character and nature and the beauty that comes with living in a place like Snohomish County. So all of this means that there's all sorts of compounding pressures on our system, including more water that's accumulating in the floodplain areas as we build out in a more urban community. We have values on the land, like people are coming in and purchasing farm areas and making it hard for farming to continue. So these, and then of course, all those impact the ability for salmon to thrive and for us to be able to restore those floodplain areas. So there's a lot of different pressures being compounded in the system that really relate to the way that we live on the land and how we manage the water in the landscape. Kari or Mike?
Thank you, Morgan. Anyone else want to add to that?
Morgan nailed it, and Kari's sort of history also really spelled out what impacts have been happening on the landscape. Yeah, it's human civilizations have always sprung up around rivers. It makes perfect sense. The floodplains that rivers provide are fertile. They are that way because the river occupies them regularly. And what we've done, which is a very normal human reaction, is to cut that off because it's sort of annoying to have the river in your backyard. But those changes that we've made on the landscape have stopped that river process. The rivers will always be pushing against those confinements, and so we're trying to find ways where we can to give a little back to the river because it does the best job at creating salmon habitat.
Thanks, Mike. Go ahead, Linda.
Yeah, I'm looking in the chat and there's a few questions coming in there. And one from Nicole, the first one here is, how can I get involved in this work in a volunteer capacity? We certainly encourage everyone to get involved in this work in some way or another. We do have various volunteer events through the Conservation District. SLS also has different special topic sessions that everyone is invited to join, where we take a deep dive into specific topics. And so I'm hoping that maybe Kari could put something in the chat, provide a link so you can access those. And then also feel free to reach out to us at the Conservation District for volunteer opportunities. And Kari, perhaps you could put a link for that as well.
Thank you, Linda. And I see we have more than one question in the chat, so we'll go to the next one here from David. How do we address all the adverse chemicals that get into the rivers and sewage that is getting domed into the Puget Sound, I believe? So, any comments on that?
I'll jump in on that one. Stormwater is a real issue, and a lot of people don't realize that what goes down the storm drain is not treated. It just goes straight out to the sound. So most of the municipalities around Snohomish County and across the country have permits that show that they're trying to do some work to get that water as clean as possible before it is outfall to the sound. So native plants help, rain gardens help, getting your car oil drips help. Having permeable surfaces where water can infiltrate back into the ground is really important too. So there's a lot of ways that we can help with stormwater. These new construction sites, they take all the dirt off, they put in a house, they give you about 1 inch or 2 of soil back. That's not enough to keep the water there. So we really encourage the district and throughout all this work, but getting native plants back in the ground, and really trees, urban trees, very, very important.
Absolutely. Another question is from Bob, who asks, what happens to the estuaries as the sea rises? Does anyone want to answer that?
I'll jump in on that one. That's the $1 million question right now. We are restoring a lot of estuary. The biggest fear we have is that the estuary can't sort of keep up with that sea level rise. As we open those areas up, rivers flow in, sediment is deposited. As sea level rises, it's entirely possible that that'll back the water up even more, and more of that sediment will fall out, and the marsh will build with sea level rise. We are measuring sometimes down to the millimeter of sedimentation that happens on our project, and we're tracking that over time. And time will tell if those estuaries can sort of keep up with sea level rise and continue to provide habitat, continue to provide protection, and a buffer to floods and other natural hazards that occur across the world.
All right, I have another question in the chat, and I'm just going to say this in the way that I think Richard would, because of all the cool stuff that's listed here. What are some of the best practices for river recreation? How can we best advise boaters, swimmers, rafters to take care while traversing the local rivers. This is an exciting pathway that's always taken place for people to have these activities. So how, what are some best practices that we can provide?
Who wants to tackle that one? I mean, every time I get a chance to talk to river user groups, I bring up kind of what the river would have looked like historically. It would not have been as kind of clean and tidy as it is right now. There would have been way more really huge log jams. As trees fall into the river, they float downstream and then they accumulate in big piles. Those were cleared out for many, many years because they're kind of messy and they make navigation hard. What I would love river recreation users to acknowledge and hopefully to appreciate is that is what our rivers should look like. They shouldn't be clean. They should be a little messy and a little challenging, especially when you're trying to sort of navigate waterways from upstream to downstream. But that's the way they should be. If you're out for a experience in nature, that is what you should expect. But that requires a little extra planning, a little extra training, and the ability to sort of identify hazards and avoid them. That's easy to say. It's a little harder to sort of get that word out and to have people think that that's a good idea. But I'm going to keep trying.
All right, Linda, did you want to join in?
I'll just add a standard best practice for anyone recreating in the wild, on the water, or near the water is, just make sure you're carrying out any trash. Don't leave any trash, and also don't leave any of your own personal human waste because that will pollute our waters and it will pollute our shellfish beds, and it also can make the water quality not friendly for fish. So we want to just make sure we're leaving the environment as clean as we found it.
I would add one thing to that. When we did our film festivals for our digital storytelling videos this summer, there was a gentleman that came and he has like a quarter mile stretch of the Snohomish River. Lead weights are a major problem. And now if you don't use lead weights, that's very helpful, but he's collected just from his little part of the river, all these lead weights. He has, I don't know, I forget what he calls it. I'll try and find a link of his stuff, but just remember what goes in the river stays there, and that those sinkers do add up over time.
All right. Any other comments on this piece? Richard is happy. I see a thumbs up. So one question that I have for you all is connecting these needs and the focus here to the business community specifically. How can they be advocates? How does this connect to their space? Can you speak a little bit to why there would be some connection points between the general business community and the space?
I'll jump in with agriculture and fishing are both food sources for us, and we all need to eat. So the business community should be thinking about how we sustain both the river systems and the fish, as well as the farming that we have here. It's a huge industry. I think when COVID happened, Linda Nunzig from the county would point out that a lot of people suddenly were like, where's my farmer? Oh my gosh, I don't have XYZ. And so remembering how important that agriculture is to us here, and support those farmers and keep that going.
All right. Okay. Next question I have is how is SLS working to find a balance between salmon recovery, agricultural resilience, and floodplain connectivity in Snohomish County?
Morgan, do you want to take that one and talk about our multi-benefit projects?
Yeah. And I apologize, everybody. I got a little flustered with my presentation mode. So I think I missed a number of points that I was hoping to make, but life happens. Anyhow, so one of the things that we really strive to do in SLS is look for alignment of our interests and the ability to find solutions where we are able. We recognize there's going to be some things that we still hold disagreement around. And for those things that we disagree, Maybe we can't find agreement, but we can understand each other better. We can find greater empathy for the work that we're doing or for each other's positions. So a lot of the work that we've been working on over the last 4 or 5 years is trying to create a transparent and clear list of projects. And we recognize that some of those projects, they might be able to hit on all 3 of the things that we care about. Like one project like Thomas Eddy, it's really helping fish, it's really helping flood, and it's actually having some benefits to agriculture, which Mike didn't really touch on, but there are some kind of benefits to neighboring areas. And not to mention that there's going to be some recreational benefits and improved trails and things like that. So there's some projects out there that we know can really do all 3. But then there's also projects within an area that might just benefit agricultural needs, or it might just be a fish project. And so by creating a list of projects transparently and with clear understanding, we're more able to understand, well, what all this really adds up to. How can we better understand? And then if we understand, oh, this project for ag maybe doesn't have much fish benefit, but we understand how it contributes to that community and that value, we can support it, we can get behind it, we can advocate for funding and resources to come to that project. And maybe the ag community can do the same if there's a fish project that maybe doesn't have a lot of benefit to ag. And so by working together, we're able to see across the entire landscape what this possible future could be. Also recognizing there's still going to be areas that we are needing to spend more time sitting and talking about.
Yeah, I'll continue that thought with Thomas Eddy. Thomas Eddy is largely a fish benefit type project, but because of SLS and because it sort of changed the attitude within the salmon recovery community, when I started reaching out to people about that Thomas Eddy project, it was just obvious to me that reaching out to the farms around the Thomas Eddy project was just the right thing to do. It had to be done. So these discussions we've had with SLS have really changed the direction of how we look at projects more holistically. We might look at the entire river reach that we're doing work on and look for other benefits that we can do. For instance, Chinook Farms is right next to the Thomas Eddy project. We talked to Eric Fritch out there. He's got a great operation, like beef. Oh man, he's got some good beef on that farm. But one of the things he said was, my farm floods and that's okay. I would love it to drain quicker. And these little tiny culverts that we have around the farm are just too small and get overwhelmed during floods. So we're looking at the possibility of replacing at least one of those culverts, which will help his farm recover from floods, but it'll also improve fish passage to those different habitats on the floodplain. So SLS has just sort of opened up those conversations and those possibilities, and it really does help projects move forward with a more holistic focus.
All right. This is awesome. We have just a follow-up here tied to the business community question. Is there a significance to the late Terry Williams's comment saying that everyone has a seat at the SLS table? Is there some significance there to the business connection?
So many of us here around the table are working in government or governmental entities. And I think that that's a really important part of this process, to create a scaffolding or framework that we can all kind of convene and work around. But one of the things that I really admired about Terry in my work with him was that he never let these frameworks stop his creativity and his imagination. And I feel like the business community has the ability to be creative and use your imagination to create change and to spark new innovations that are going to help us be more successful in achieving all the goals and the dreams that we have for this landscape. And so that's the thing that I really think Terry embodied, is very creative thinking about the way that we are going to move forward in our world. And a lot of that comes out of, small businesses that are willing to take risks and think differently and think outside of the box. So to me, when Terry talks about everybody having a seat, that's really the spirit that he embodies, is creativity, connection, and thinking outside of the box.
All right. Anyone else want to add to that, or is that succinct enough? I think that was great. All right. Thank you, Morgan. So folks, we're down to the wire here. What I'd like to do is just give each of you who are on screen just maybe a 30-second closing remarks to our audience, and then we'll dive in from there. So I think Kari, if you'd like to start, and then we'll go from Kari to Mike, Kristen, Linda, and finish with Morgan, who just spoke. So take it away.
Thank you so much. So I just put in the link to farmfishflood.org. Encourage you to look at our new website. It tells other stories of people who have been a part of SLS from farming, Snohomish Tribes, Tulalip Tribes, Lindsay from Department of Fish and Wildlife, etc. And just kind of take a look. Also, you can sign up for our newsletter. We do about a quarterly newsletter to update people about what is going on. And I encourage you to sign up for a special topic at some point, or go to the library on YouTube as well, just to see all the topics of the work that this group is doing. Thanks.
I'll just say thank you, everyone, for joining into this conversation. I'll pitch information on the Thomas Eddy Project one more time. You can just Google Thomas Eddy Restoration. Our website will come up. There's a click this link if you want to be updated by the project. Stay tuned. There will be volunteer opportunities associated with that park. We plan on doing a whole lot of riparian vegetation planting out there. So I'm going to work with everybody on the screen here to make sure that they're all involved in that, and there'll be plenty of opportunities to get involved for folks who want to do that.
Thanks, Mike. I'll just add that I've been very quiet during this presentation and discussion. I think Kari, Linda, Mike, and Morgan have done an amazing job of really highlighting some work. So I'll just echo some of what I think everybody said today, that we're at a kind of a transformational time in Snohomish County. We have farmers who are uncertain about what their business model looks like over the next 10 years and beyond, and are feeling very threatened. We have salmon on the extinction, and tribes who in some cases haven't been able to harvest in this current generation. And so we need creative problem solving and a lot of just great ideas. And so I'm just very excited that we had the opportunity to speak with this group, and hopefully bring a few more creative, passionate thinkers to this this really challenging and amazing opportunity, transformational time that we have. So Linda, I think you were next.
Sure. I'll just add to that, another program we have at the district is a green stormwater infrastructure that can help reduce the pollutants that are going into our streams. So if anyone has a private business where you would like to install a rain garden or bioswale, something to treat stormwater runoff, let us know, and we'll be happy to provide you some assistance in that.
Right. I think we have Morgan.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the opportunity to present today. And, you know, I opened up my presentation saying that I see the world through the lens of salmon, and that's really true. But the large part of why I see it that way is because I really care deeply about people, and salmon and people are incredibly connected. And the more that we can incorporate the ecosystem, the species that live here alongside the people that we care about, I think the better off we're all going to be. So I hope as you move forward today, you can think about how you're keeping the salmon and the system in your hearts, and join us as we really work to transform this area into being a place that's thriving with agricultural interests, supports our communities and safety of floods, and also is able to support salmon recovery moving forward.
Awesome. I want to thank all of our panelists for joining us today and providing some very needed insight on this topic. I think we are very thankful for you all. Again, you can see and receive the presentation that will be on YouTube, and it's still going to be set in stone on our Facebook page as well. Again, I want to thank all of you. This has been a focus on sustainable land strategy, SLS, and the future for Snohomish County. For those registered for today's installation, as I mentioned, check your inbox for more information and reference links that we have to Snohomish Conservation District, Tulalip Tribes, Natural Resources, Snohomish County Habitat Projects, the Thomas Eddy Restoration Project, and Sustainable Lands Strategy. With that in mind, we're going to shift gears here and thank our panelists for being on. And please stay on screen once we shift to our big screen piece. But I'd like to highlight what's coming next. And that is mid-session update. As you all know, there is a huge legislative process going on, legislative session in Olympia, which is all tied to quality of life and other elements of Washingtonians here. It's going to be a coffee chats on Tuesday, February 28th. Which is going to be again from 8:30 to 9:30 a.m. So if you haven't RSVP'd, you sure can. We'd love to see you there. We are going to actually have a update from Senator Jesse Solomon, who is the 32nd Legislative District focus, and Shelley Helder, who is the Senior Government Affairs Consultant for Gordon Thomas Honeywell, and also supporting Economic Alliance Snohomish County. We'll also have some supportive updates on the Washington State legislative session. So please be there if you can. Also coming up in the next month is the state of Everett. We will have an address from Mayor Cassie Franklin, and this will be at the Edward Hanson Conference Center from 3:30 to 6 p.m. on March 9th. And this is being presented by the Boeing Company and Coastal Community Bank. So please, if you haven't registered or signed up, please reach out to us and we'll get that done, or you could use the QR code right there. All right, folks, this is the most exciting part for me. Thank you all for joining. This is the gallery mode. So put your screen into gallery mode and grab your coffee cups or water or whatever it is you like to consume. And let's hold these cups up high, and want to send a special thank you to our SLS effort. Everyone have a great Tuesday. Have lots of candy, eat food, and be merry. All right. Take care.
Thanks.